good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Karan. Always good to talk with you.
How are things in Bend, Oregon in quarantine times?
Well, I know the whole world is kind of flipped upside down right now. I will say we were hit with the same curveball everybody else was. Fortunately, in Bend, we live in the outdoors. It's a small town, not a lot of people. And we do have the luxury of having a lot of the beautiful wilderness around us. So if I'm going to be quarantined in one town in America, I think I've chosen the right town to be quarantined in. And
there you go. There you go.
But we're still happy out here in Bend.
And, I know you've had lots of big events happen to you recently, but you had maybe one of the more monumental life events. Maybe share that on becoming a father.
Yeah, so 12 weeks ago now, I had my firstborn. Her name is Ross Lipson. My daughter was born, and it's been a wild ride, coupled with the ride of Dutchie and having a baby at the same time. Never expected all that to come together, but hey, when it rains, it pours in a good way as well. So happy to knock them both out at the same time.
I mean, you only have 12 weeks of experience, but what is more challenging so far, being a father or running Dutchie?
I'll say it, and it may sound cliche, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart and hope my wife is watching or listening now. In fact, I'll make sure she does. My wife is a rock star, and she has totally crushed being a mom. That has made my life far easier as a dad. But I think on a serious note, it's been great, and having that understanding that my wife has of what it's like to be in the seat that I'm in right now with Dutchie and what we're going through has been a really important piece to support me and enabling me to continue on with the trajectory that we have with Dutchie today.
Awesome. Well, before we get into a lot about Dutchie, I think, as investors of yours, when I get asked about why we made an investment in Dutchie, we almost always put a lot of the focus and attention on you. You've built a great business, super exciting, but we put a lot of attention on you because, that is so important, especially at the stage that we first invested in Dutchie and where we like to be, early on. And so I think it would be really helpful to go through your journey a little bit pre-Dutchie, because I think that informed, at least for me, a lot of my confidence when we invested. And I also think it's a really fascinating story. So before we get to Dutchie, how did we get here? Talk specifically about the couple businesses you built before.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Southeast Michigan and went to Michigan State University back in 2005. And this was a time where consumer tech wasn't what we know of it as it is today. And I remember I had just got my first Apple laptop, in fact, and Facebook had launched at our school a month before this. First day in the dorms at Michigan State University, a lot of us remember back in the day, you would get hit with a bunch of food delivery and restaurant takeout menus under the door. And the short of the story is I got together with my friends to order food online and saw it as an archaic and overlooked process. And online food ordering wasn't a thing at this time. And through a little bit of research and finding a group of students at actually Penn State that had a similar idea, we partnered together and launched online food ordering and through university markets, university campuses. And it was one of the early on online food ordering services in the States. We gained a lot of traction early on. We had a really successful model of finding students at each school that owned their territory. Each university market was branded for that university town. And it really allowed me to kind of sink my teeth and kind of dip my toes in the water of not only online ordering, but just the world of tech and the opportunity in scaling a tech business. And over the next couple of years, I worked with this group, and as we scaled, I learned a lot about this online ordering, on-demand, hyper-local model. I, in 2008, left this group and decided to take the model and move to Canada, which at the time was an untapped market. So nobody was doing online food ordering up there.
Can I pause real quick? Sorry, Ross. So even before this, I guess, are you a tech guy? Were you programming? Were you did you know you were going to school and you were going to hopefully launch a website or launch a business? Was that in the plans?
Yeah, so I guess it all stems back from, I would say, how I was raised. My dad is still today is an entrepreneur who's found a lot of success and always he's had a business for 35 years now and still continuing at the age of 65. And he really instilled with me and my brother, who's my co-founder here, Zach, this. He got rid of any limitation and restriction in our thought process on what we could accomplish and what we could do. From a really early age, we would have an idea and my dad would just quickly push it in motion. He would take us to the next step. Whether it was we were 12 years old sitting down with a lawyer or an IP or a patent attorney, he would just he would throw us right in the mix. And he really just showed us, one, we could do anything, but just as important, if not more important, how to move forward. I think a lot of times we have these ideas, but we don't take that first step or we don't know how to. And he just really instilled this forward motion from idea phase to just move on it and see how far you get. And then on the other side, my mom was just the world's best cheerleader. She would support me in whatever thought, idea, move I made. So when I got to Michigan State, I will say from elementary school through middle and high school, I always had a side hustle. I was doing well in school. I was a straight A student, but I was infatuated with making an extra buck. Whether it was selling burn CDs, sample cologne, Beanie Babies and Pokemon cards, the list goes on. I just couldn't get enough of it. In fact, funny story, in elementary school in third grade, we had two cubbies. One was full of art supplies where it was supposed to be. Took my art supplies, I threw them out. This was a time when Sam's Club first launched. My mom would take me to Sam's Club. I would buy bulk Warheads, which was like the hottest candy at the time.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, super sour if you could make it through. Yeah. And I took these bulk Sam's Club, essentially you buy in bulk, and then I would break it out and sell pieces of like Warheads by the piece to the students. And I had made $100 cash in third grade. My cubby was overflowing with cash, and I got kicked out of school and sent home for it. And it was a really funny time because my parents were kind of ecstatic and like that was something that they supported, but of course you shouldn't be doing that in third grade. So I've always had a side hustle. And when I got to Michigan State University and saw this idea and had this epiphany of the value of online food ordering, it was a quick call to the parents. I'm dropping university. They were in full support of it, kind of knew it was coming, and I dove headfirst into the world of business.
Yeah. Well, what's so funny about that is, like, in many ways you were too early with that business, right?
Totally.
Like, since your online ordering business has come 10 other food businesses which have become billion-dollar businesses. I'm going to guess the Michigan State one didn't quite reach those heights, but it's also important to understand that so many times, like, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but like if the timing is wrong, it's kind of irrelevant.
Absolutely. That resonates with me. There's a book I point to all the time. It's Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. And it's about that there are innate skills that breed success. However, there are many attributes that lead to success that you're not in control of, and timing, place, all part of it. And I'll kind of segue into my story there, which is really interesting because there's a parallel to that book and being the right person, right place, right time. So, and to what you said, yeah, definitely too early, but never too early to educate yourself, right?
Yeah.
So that was my form of school, of education. Right. I was learning firsthand, making my mistakes, learning from my lessons, the product market fit, the sales and marketing, my core attributes or aspects to why I succeed today as a CEO of Dutchie. And from there, I was able to exit that group and that project, and I took the model to Canada, where it was an untapped market. So I learned a lot of lessons from that first project, and I was taking now a proven model as an educated businessman to an untapped market at a better time.
Sorry, why Canada?
So it was funny. I was from Michigan, and it was a quick jump over the border, and quick 4 hour drive. I was in Toronto.
Okay.
So one, the proximity. I had a lot of friends in Canada that were savvy business friends that I was able to kind of sync up with and run the idea by, and then they were able to partner and actually become more of a part of the endeavor. And then also untapped market. So in this time now in the States, Grubhub, Seamless Web started to come up. and started to, I wouldn't say saturate the market, but you started to see online food ordering services pop up. Whereas Canada was a few years behind the States at this time, especially in tech. And it was an untapped market. It was a big opportunity. So I jumped over the border, moved to Toronto, and I launched Grub Canada in 2008, which was Canada's first online food ordering service. We blitzscaled the country quickly. We had the playbook. We already ran it, and we had no competition. It was a beautiful thing. And within 2 years, we had thousands of restaurants. We were doing over $1 billion in GMV. We became a household name. And really there went from maybe, if you will, undergrad to like masters and learning online food ordering, more so at scale, with more of a mature perspective on what it's like to really run a business. A big difference from when I was 18 years old and kind of just hacking it together with a group. So that led in 2012 to the acquisition. Just Eat bought Grub Canada. And at that time, offered myself and my partner an employment opportunity to run Just Eat Canada. I passed on that at the time, and my partner took it, who's still at the helm over there today, which has been a fascinating story to keep up with.
Yeah. So you've essentially at this point, in 2012, you're still very young. You've launched 2 businesses. You've basically exited both of those. What in your mind at that point was the plan?
Yeah, so I'd moved from Toronto to Vancouver to build business out west, and I truly got bit by the nature bug. I was spending weekends at Whistler and having a ball. You have to imagine I was from 18 to 25 years old. I had my head down. I was in the office and I was working really hard, while most people at that age are doing different things. And that started to hit me. I realized, I had hit personal and financial fulfillment with this project, but I was lacking life outside of the office. So I decided at that time I was going to pack up my car and I was going to hit the road and kind of see what the Pacific Northwest has to offer, it's abundant in beauty and so much to see and do. And I started zigzagging through Washington down into Oregon, from kind of mountain to mountain, specifically from Baker down through Snoqualmie Pass to hit Alpental, down to Crystal, down to Mount Hood. And if anybody that's listening is familiar with these mountains, they know what I was up to and why I did that. And I met somebody at Mount Hood while snowboarding who told me, I told him of my story. I sold my company. I was on the road. I was kind of like over the moon, just aimlessly driving and enjoying life at 25. Didn't really have a place to be or any clock. And they told me that I needed to go to Bend and ride Mount Bachelor. I was really into snowboarding. And they had a place that I could stay at. So I followed them along the next day, stayed at their place. And there I was, stumbled upon this utopic town, Bend, Oregon. And it's kind of like, if you've been, just a happy, healthy town of just beauty all around, mountains, lakes, rivers. And it was one of those aha moments I've had in my life where I knew I was at the right place at the right time, and this was my new home. So I planted my roots and started to focus on things outside of the office, things I wanted to accomplish. I traveled, I got married, I got a dog, I bought a house. And fast forward a couple of years, I feel like I always draw the comparison to racing cars. I feel like a race car driver, but I was out of the seat and I needed to get back in, as far as my comparison to business. So I was really itching to get back.
Sorry, I want to interrupt you because I feel like you strategically placed yourself somewhere where that maybe shouldn't have been a thing, right? It's not like you quit and left and you landed in Manhattan and everywhere you look, someone's doing this, or you were in Silicon Valley, or you were in LA, you were in Bend, Oregon. Not that it's some sleepy place, but to some degree, people are there really to enjoy life. So what was driving it? What happened? You hit the kind of sort of maximum you could achieve or enjoy, that kind of life?
I think that it's just this deep down who I am as a person. There's so much in business that resonates and kind of correlates to my life, if you will. I think anybody that knows me, one of the first things that they'll say defines me as business. I've been fascinated by it and always wanted to be a part of it. And just, I have that fire burning in me. And I think it kind of if you don't use it, you lose it type thing started to happen. As I grew up and I was now turning 30 and kind of just overstaying my welcome at that age. 25 is too young to retire in my book. Each his own, and more power to you if you could accomplish it. But I wasn't done. I felt like I had the education and the experience that could lead to something bigger. And I felt like I overstayed my fun welcome, if you will, my sabbatical. And I was itching to get back into the driver's seat and to kind of loop back to that Outliers book by Malcolm Gladwell, Right Person, Right Place, Right Time. I'm 30 years old. I think it's a ripe age to start a business. You're mature. You have that fire and that passion. You might not have the responsibilities that one has later in life, like I do have now, being married and with a kid. And I'm in Oregon, one of the first states to legalize for cannabis. In fact, the first state to legalize delivery. I'm 2 blocks away from one of the first dispensaries that opens up in my town in Bend. And there I am. I'm standing in line now. To take a quarter step back, I've always been extremely passionate about cannabis. So from an early age, just consuming the product and the plant, and what it did for me. I'm a type A personality. I move really quickly, and I always appreciated that cannabis. At the end of the day, I could roll up a joint, smoke it, and see a different just shift in my perspective on my thought. It would maybe cut the edge and give me that different perspective that would allow me to have fun with that thought process. And I always appreciated what it did to me. I always hated the stigma. I loved the culture and the people around it, and inevitably saw an opportunity when it would go legal, right? When it inevitably went legal. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see that. And I'm now in Bend with all the things I said before. And now, first day of legalization, I'm standing in a dispensary line, 2-hour-long line, out the door and around the block, as if we all remember those first days of legalization.
Yeah, for sure.
And the light bulb, as you can imagine, is going off in my head. Online ordering for the cannabis space, and no better person to do it than you right now at this moment in time. And that was another aha moment that allowed me to just, no questions asked, head first, deep dive.
So
and that was the first book.
This is a really great lesson for anyone who wants to start a business and entrepreneurs in general. Like, how much market research do you do at this point? Like, do you go and figure out how many other people are doing delivery and whatnot and just like get discouraged? Or were you just like, I know how to do this better than anyone else, so I'm just going to do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think my quick answer is that I decide right away that that's the idea. All the obstacles, they're inevitably going to be there no matter what the idea is. There's no idea that won't have, limitations, restrictions, obstacles in front. And it's a matter of like being an entrepreneur. Part of it is it's not coming up with the idea. In fact, that's the least, it's about the execution. And when we look at execution as being able to jump over hurdles and jump through hoops, if you will, to continue on that path. So for me, it was a quick check the box. I'm doing this. Now let's do the research just to see what I'm up against and the obstacles I'll have to face, knowing that these aren't problems. These are just opportunities and things that I'll need to solve inevitably.
Yeah. And so what did you see when you started that?
Yeah. So I really started to understand the differences between cannabis and food. And I always say same, but different. The model is similar. The organization is similar. Our processes internally and externally are similar. However, there are huge differences, and one big case in point here is the point of sale integration. So in the food space, if you think about these restaurant menus, they're pretty static, and they don't change often is what I'm saying. And they may add an item or two to the menu once a year, twice a year, and may change the price for inflation, but once or twice a year. With that cadence, you can manually update the menus. In cannabis, as we all know now, these dispensaries have 500 plus items on a menu, sometimes upwards of 2,000. And they're constantly bringing in new products and selling out of products every day. And when we first launched Dutchie, we thought that like in food, you would have to just give the dispensary the tool to manually update their menu. And we launched with a dispensary. Our beta partner was High Grade Organics here in Bend, Oregon. And the owner, Nick Harsel, he was the owner and operator. He's now full-time on Dutchie. He leads our accounts team.
No way.
Yeah, we would spend countless hours every night. It was funny. He called me right after day one of launch and said, "You guys are out of your mind if you're going to have us update these menus manually. I'll be sitting here all day doing this." So after like countless hours of working through and whiteboard sessions, we realized we're going to have to integrate with the point of sale systems. And the point of sale systems at the time, they were up and coming as well. They weren't well flushed out products yet. They were scrappy startups that didn't have the most robust APIs. So a lot of this was uncharted territory for not only us, but the point of sale as well as the dispensary. And that was a huge, huge difference, still is today. we rely on these point of sale integrations. Now have over 20 point of sale integrations live. Are continuously working on innovating these integrations and rely on them to feed the menus of these dispensaries.
Got it. Well, let's do the like the standard things you do on one of these things. Like, what is Dutchie? How big have you gotten? And what are your ambitions going forward? I know I took what's usually half the time to discuss to take it into one question.
Yeah, so Dutchie is an e-commerce solution for the cannabis space. We provide the dispensaries a tool where they could sell their products online for recreational or medicinal use for delivery and pickup, and then offer a platform for consumers to order cannabis from their local dispensaries, again, for delivery or pickup. Today, Dutchie's 3 years old. We launched in July of 2017. We have $53 million in funding to date. We're across 25 states plus Canada. We work with 1,350 dispensaries. We do roughly about 75,000 orders a day, which equates to $2.3 billion in annualized sales.
That's incredible. And tell us what happened to Dutchie during COVID.
Yeah, so COVID was an interesting time for all of us, definitely here at Dutchie. Fortunately, we offered a tool that the dispensaries and consumers relied on during this pandemic to continue their business. When fortunately cannabis was deemed essential in most states. However, the need for curbside ordering online for curbside or for delivery was top of mind and almost required in most states. So fortunately, our tool was there to supply those needs and to meet the needs of the dispensaries and consumers. As soon as COVID hit, we saw a huge surge in traffic. Our order volume increased 700% pretty much overnight. We had hundreds of dispensaries across all states demand to be onboarded immediately onto our service. All of that's good on the surface, but keep in mind, things aren't as simple as just launching 300-400 dispensaries and seeing your order count go through the roof. We rely on we have SLAs, pretty strict SLAs in place internally. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, customer support, customer success, meeting the needs of these dispensaries when implementing and launching these dispensaries, giving them the full process so we don't jump the gun and launch them too early. So really, we were stress tested on all angles. The people, the departments, our processes, our product, we were really under the gun. Fortunately, we have a rock solid team, a great product in place, and it built a lot of the framework so we were ready to scale. So when it did hit, we were able to turn this business around and out the right way. And you know, my hat's off to my team. There's nobody that could do that. I couldn't do that on my own. My team was there and really buckled up, came to the punch and knocked it out of the park. But it was definitely a wild time and you know, but a great time because I think it really did accelerate cannabis forward, and it showed the need and how essential this industry is for communities and for our people. And then, you know, it shined a really bright light on the industry.
That's awesome. And I guess, you know, what I would ask going backwards a little bit is, you know, what were you able to do differently with Dutchie to kind of put you in that kind of prime position? Because to your point, most folks haven't built infrastructure to increase, you know, throughput 700% virtually overnight. What was done differently and what is still done differently so that, you know, you can do that again, you know, as you continue building the business? Yeah,
so a lot of what I've learned through the companies coming up to this through the online food ordering industry is that performance management is key and to have a data-driven approach to that. So we try and kill the narrative and look at the data of how we're operating as people, as departments, and as an organization as a whole. So each week we have a pretty strict WBR, a weekly business review, where we're able to watch from a data perspective how we're operating and where we're at when we're at capacity, so to speak, and where we can improve efficiencies. And having that framework set in stone from an early age of a company is, I think, really important and very overlooked. We all coin ourselves as scrappy startups. That's okay. That's important. Remain a scrappy startup. The longer you remain scrappy, I think the better off you are usually. That doesn't mean you can't have strict framework in place, be really driven by data, and be monitoring efficiencies and performance management. So how our team is operating through the day-to-day. So this allows us to see our utilization percentage of how each team and person how much bandwidth they actually have. So let's kill the narrative of we're busy or I'm busy. And let's look at the data to see how busy you are. Is it a lack of efficiency, or is it that you're actually busy? And if it is that you're actually busy, then let's hire and let's increase, let's allow for bandwidth there. So I think all in all, in summary, it's just having this framework, a data-driven framework in place allows us to monitor how we're doing as a business and performing. And then for when something like this happens, we're able to continue to scale up with it. That's
great. So talk to me about the future of Dutchie. You've just, completed a fairly landmark transaction, raised $35 million from folks like Howard Schultz and Thrive. What is the next step for you?
Yeah, so we just announced our Series B. It was a $35 million round. And we've set some really lofty goals for Dutchie, and we've continued to do that, which is important. What we need to do is execute on that. And there's two real big buckets that we're going to focus those funds with. One is the people, and first and foremost, the people. I kind of say, it's often the CEO that takes a conversation like this that's written up in the press, but it's the team behind them that is the reason why that person's in the press at that time. And unfortunately, podcasts like this and press release can't highlight every single individual at the company, but it's a family first company here. It's team over individual. And we're going to really focus our efforts on continuing to build the team, hiring and recruiting top talent. The second bucket is on product innovation. So the cannabis space, it's a very nascent industry. It's explosive. With that, the needs of the retailers and the consumers are continuing to evolve, and they won't stop. And as we scale, those needs kind of compound and become larger and larger. So it's important that we keep up with our consumers and our dispensaries, and we, again, meet those needs of our customers. And with that, we're going to need to continue to innovate and launch features that optimize the experience for the consumer and the retailer on Dutchie.
Got it. Excellent. Talk to me about fundraising for a second. Is this something you were proficient in pre-Dutchie?
I didn't do much fundraising before Dutchie. I was part of the community and networking, and had learned and started to watch what it was like, but really, really dove deep with Dutchie just because of the needs of the business. It's very capital intensive. And again, we set really lofty goals for ourselves. So in order to execute, it does take capital, especially at the trajectory and speed that we're striving for. But I'll say raising capital in all industries is of course very difficult. In cannabis, it's even more so. There are a lot of funds that can't invest in cannabis. But one thing that I would like to throw out there and something that I stress and where I find the importance is a lot of entrepreneurs look at raising capital as a drag and they hate it. And I understand that. It sucks. It's a lot, everybody reads the press and thinks it's amazing. But the truth is 9 out of 10 times you're going to get a no. And 9 out of 10 times they're going to ask you 1,000,001 questions that you might not have the right answer for. So You're really getting sent through the ringer. However, the one thing that I'll add to it is that it's a wonderfully informative and educational process if the entrepreneur has that open mindset to it. So something that I've noticed when raising capital with Dutchie is it's amazing the investors and people that I get to talk to about my business and hear their perspective on it. It's free education, right? And it's invaluable education. You're talking to accredited investors, VCs that have proven a solid track record, that have invested in tech companies that have scaled and exited before. Listen to what they're asking, hear their perspective, check the ego at the door. These people are brilliant and you're talking to them for a reason. They're talking to you for a reason. So really hone in on what they're saying. And I could say that I've learned so much about Dutchie and implemented so much just from the questions, and it's really aligned my focus as the CEO of Dutchie on where are the investors focusing? What are the holes that they're poking? What are the questions that they're asking? What are the fears that they have? Now let me focus on that and see if I could solve that. And I think that there's a beautiful relationship you can have with that if you have the right mindset, instead of coming into it just, thinking, this is going to suck. I'm going to get thrown through the ringer and run this marathon that nobody wants to run. So
I like that in terms of, giving entrepreneurs and other founders a perspective as to sort of how to approach it, almost change your attitude about it. But I guess if you were to give someone more like something more concrete that you've been able to do that's helped you be successful there? Whether it's in terms of, you know, look, I think at the core, it's like building an amazing business and being able to sort of, you know, tell your story. But, you know, even around timing or when you fundraised, or like, has there been anything there that you feel like you've learned that, you know, could be applicable to others?
Yeah, definitely. I think what stands out is come prepared. The fundraising process is very much one and the same. VCs all run a very similar process. Have your deck prepared, have your financials prepared, understand what they're looking at and why they're looking at that. And just, if you come prepared, you'll be more efficient. Because fundraising, I think the problem is when fundraising takes too long and derails you from your business. You know, you have two jobs, so to speak. You have to keep up with the day-to-day operations as well as fundraise, and those are two full-time jobs. And the more efficient you are with the fundraise process, the quicker you can go from start to finish, the better off you are. And I think the only way to do that is to be prepared. Not to mention, it looks really good on the investor side. The investors have that piece of comfort knowing that you know what you're going through. You maybe been here before, maybe not, but you know what to expect. And you have everything for us as the investor that makes their life easier as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So Ross, obviously we've been early investors of yours and big fans of yours. And, you know, I know we collaborated really nicely when we were, leading your seed round. You know, you've since gone on and brought on, you know, an additional list of impressive investors to the table. Maybe tell us a little bit about them, and also, you know, what you think drew them to Dutchie, and what are you getting out of them that, you know, really gives you an edge as you continue to build out the company?
Yeah, so I think, you know, all investors are different and have a different, bring a different value to the table. And, you know, we have Casa, Verde and Karan Ventures, which are domain experts. They know the cannabis industry arguably better than any, if not with the best of them in cannabis. We brought on Thrive, who has made an investment in LeafLink in the cannabis space, but is a bit more green to cannabis, but has a rock solid portfolio of tech companies that have scaled. You know, you have Slack, Instagram, Warby Parker, GitHub, and so on and so forth, Stripe. There's so many. They really understand how to build an organization at scale. And then you have people like Howard Schultz, for example, a business leader, a visionary, somebody that understands culture better than anybody, how to really lead an organization at scale. So I think what's important is know that all investors, just like everybody in life, they bring different aspects to the table. And if you could marry different types of investors together and bring, you could kind of create, everybody's a piece of the pie. Look for a full pie there, right? Cover all ends of the spectrum, all different perspectives. You know, you have, and then when it comes to, you know, bringing all those thoughts and collaborating together, that cumulative thought and combined effort it compounds. Everybody kind of feeds off of each other. So, you know, fortunately, we've been able to work with a great group of investors. I mentioned a few of the many, and we just bring all different unique perspectives and values to the table.
That's great. What do you think about, and how do you view the idea of kind of marketing and fundraising when you're not fundraising?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, you know, I think that as a CEO, you're always on, right? You're always working, whether you're at in the hot seat or not. And, you know, it's important. I think that the important part to fundraising is not the amount of capital you get or the valuation. It's finding the right person. And in order to find the right person to join team, you know, you're on the same team at a high level, making really important decisions. And some of them could be when things are great, but some of them could be when things are tough and when you're pushed up against the wall. And it's important to have that relationship and pick the right person. And the only way to do that is to spend time with that investor. They need to know you, you need to know them. And the fundraising process, sometimes long, is usually not that long. Whether it's a couple months, let's say, it's not enough time to really get to know and feel comfortable and confident with that other party. So I personally am always out talking to investors. getting to know them. Whether I'm raising or not, we're getting to know each other. And that is twofold. It forms that relationship. So I know and they know that we are fit for each other and we're going to work well together. And we've built that trust and that understanding. So if I am pushed up against the wall as a CEO of a company at a board meeting, it's okay. We're there together. We're on the same team and have that understanding. But also it allows us to be more efficient when it's time to raise. As you could speak to an investor, most investors want to see the story. It's tough when you get a quick snapshot at a moment in time of how that business is doing. A good salesman could sell that. But if you could really see the trajectory and understand the story and how it develops, then it makes fundraising a bit more efficient and easier. So, I think it's always be fundraising in a sense. And when I say fundraising, I shouldn't say always be speaking with the VC community or the investor network and getting to know them and letting them get to know you and your story. So when it is come time to pick your right partner or to raise capital, it makes that process a bit more efficient.
Yeah, and I think that's something that most people don't get, and you only hear from them as a investor, when it's time to ask for dollars, right? And you're right; it's a very quick time frame sometimes for people like me to get to know you,
right.
And we like to do that with companies too, right? Is to say, hey, I'm in your neck of the woods, or I have this time free on Zoom. Like let's get on a call and just catch me up. What's going on? And then I think to your point, like it should and can be a very mutually beneficial process, right? Because you get to hear what we see, and we see everything to some degree. And then, on the other side, you get to set the stage for what's to come or what's interesting, and maybe, get to use some of those tidbits to sort of tailor things differently or think about them from a different perspective. All right, final question. What is the ultimate outcome for you? And what I mean is, like, when will you be able to kind of like breathe this sigh of accomplishment? Because it's been go ever since you really launched Dutchie 3 years ago. What's going to be that for you if you could kind of dictate that outcome today?
Yeah, it's the toughest question I think you can ask or anybody can ask me, and it's almost my fear. I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I always want to keep climbing, always see room for improvement, always see what the future holds, and are eyes wide open to it. I think what I could answer it by saying we want to seize the opportunity at hand. We're in the first innings of cannabis. Again, it's a nascent industry. It's explosive, and is to finish this project without a regret. And I was in the online food ordering industry very early and saw what it became. And I know that cannabis will become, I'm confident, and I'm sure we all are, in the size that the cannabis industry can become, and want to make sure that we seize the opportunity at hand, which is large, and we obviously don't check out early. So,
best of luck. I hope you get everything out of it, and I hope we do too along the ride. And thanks for the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.